Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. The second coming. Hardly are those words out when a vast image out of Spiritus Mundi troubles my sight. Somewhere in sands of the desert, a shape with lion body and the head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun is moving its slow thighs, while all about it real shadows of the indignant desert birds. The darkness drops again, but now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle, and what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches toward Bethlehem to be born. And that is The Second Coming by William Butler Yeats. This is a poem that he composed in 1919, more than 100 years ago, following the horrors of the Second World War. And as we watch the events play out before us that we are witnessing, it is a sad reflection that we haven't moved past this type of conflict since that time. But I thought that was an appropriate way to start the live stream today. Hope you can bear with my rendition of that, but it's what my mind went to when I was reading the news today. And honestly, there's so much to keep up with here. I've been trying to kind of get on top of what's going on in the Middle East all day long, so that I could do this live stream and talk about this and the risks that are being posed right now. But every minute it seems like something new is coming out. So I'm going to do my best here today. We're going to go over a lot of stuff, and we're going to talk about what this could potentially mean for the globe and the economy, what we need to be getting prepared for. All right, so some folks in the chat are saying, not sure I believe everything they are showing. And yeah, coin flip. I would agree with that sentiment. We have to be highly circumspect about any information that is making its way to us through the mainstream media or even through secondary channels like Twitter and social media. Now, this is the story I want to start off with today. This is one from the Wall Street Journal. This was released yesterday. The headline, pretty shocking. Iran helped plot attack on Israel over several weeks. Now, even if some of the information in the mainstream media may be placed there, I mean, there's a lot of narrative control. Look, the world's at war here. World War III is beginning, if you ask me. I think it began in Ukraine last year officially, but, when you look back from the future, I think that's the date they'll put on it. But it's escalating in a very big way here. And even though the mainstream narrative, there may be, propaganda, there may be an attempt to control narratives, this is the best we've got. So, we've got to look at what information is being presented to us and try to apply some inductive reasoning to see if we can get an idea of what's really going on. And, I'm going to try and stay as unbiased as I can. But listen, everybody's got implicit biases. Very difficult to work past those. So, bear with me. That being said, also, as we watch this conflict again, I think it's important to emphasize that we have to have sympathy for the individual humans who are caught up in all of this. War is a terrible thing. All right, so if the Wall Street Journal is reporting that Iran helped plot this attack, that is going to have some very major implications for how this thing plays out and where we are headed. Excuse me. So this is according to sources that the Wall Street Journal has in Hamas and Hezbollah. Hezbollah being the Lebanon-based group, also operating in Syria, a militant group which is backed and funded by Iran. Now, the U.S. Is kind of taking a different tone on this, at least some of our politicians. We've got Secretary of State Antony Blinken saying, "We have not yet seen evidence that Iran directed or was behind this particular attack, but there is certainly a long relationship." Now, I take that as a sign that the current administration is very concerned about the price of oil as we head into 2024. Of course, you can't forget that there's an election next year, and surging oil, which is likely what will be the result of the escalation of this conflict if we move into Iran or act against Iran in any way. The administration that is currently in Washington doesn't want that. They don't want Iran to get drawn into this. I mean, they were just sitting down with talks with Iran. They freed up $6 billion of funds. There were some folks released, and I'm sure everybody watching has some opinions on that. Of course, hindsight is 2020. But it's important to note here that not everybody in the U.S. administration or in the U.S. West necessarily wants this conflict to escalate. But as we're going to go over, that is not the case for everybody. Of course, this is a massively divisive issue. You've probably noticed that a tremendously fractured U.S. population now has one more point to be divided on, and that is exactly what we're watching play out here. I see some folks in the chat saying World War III. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how else to characterize this. This is clearly an escalation in this global conflict, and if you ask me, it's likely to get a lot worse. I mean, we're going through a fourth turning. Typically, these events that occur every 80 years or so involve significant, real, kinetic conflicts. Go back 80 years, you got World War II, 80 years before that, Civil War, 80 years before that, Revolutionary War. This is just kind of one of the cycles that we go through. So let's look at what's going on in the markets today following this conflict, because today, of course, the first trading day of the stock market since this kicked off. Crude oil seeing a notable pickup, 4.41%, although I think this is only a preview of what is to come. Those folks who were calling for $140 barrel oil or $300 crude oil, that is all very much a possibility now for, if not for 2023, for 2024. But as we've seen over the past few days, things can happen very quickly, and we still have a lot of time to get through before the end of this year. So one thing that we didn't see was the yield change much on the 10-year bond, but that is because today is a Treasury market holiday. It's a Columbus Day or Indigenous Peoples Day, a couple of different holidays that people are celebrating, but the bond market is closed. So tomorrow is really going to be the big day when we see what the impact of this is the bond route over? And I suspect that it may take a bit of a breather, and in the short term, we may see the yield on treasuries come down as folks look for safety in this now very uncertain environment. Speaking of safety, we did see on silver and gold today, both metals in the green. We can take a look at the gold chart here, up $23. Silver also up. Now, stocks are in the green at the moment. They started off, pretty heavily into the red, but it looks like they're catching a bid now. And it might be actually that, conflict is highly stock market positive. That is a dynamic that we've witnessed in the past. And, one thing that is guaranteed by this conflict is that we're going to see the debt continue to soar. No doubt about that. A lot of money being borrowed from the future and spent into the now. So that is positive for asset prices. It's also very inflationary. So look to see this play out in the inflation numbers moving forward. Thank you, Constitutional Stagger, for that super chat. Really appreciate that, sir. How about that national debt clock? Yeah, we're over $33.5 trillion now in the national debt, and that is going to continue to move up at a fast pace. Before we were sending a lot of arms money to Ukraine. Looks like that probably will continue, if you ask me, but people are getting a lot more hesitant to approve these arms packages to Ukraine, the billions of dollars flowing over there. Well, guess what? Now we have a new place for all of that money that we don't have to get spent. So expect the debt to continue to explode. And ultimately, I do believe that the yield on U.S. Treasuries will be moving much higher, even if it takes a bit of a breather on this news. Now, speaking of gold and silver, we've got a little bit of housekeeping here for you folks. We've got SD Bullion launching this Napoleon 5-ounce coin. It's an exclusive coin produced for them by the Scottsdale Mint. That went live today. Looks like there's still some in stock. I showed one of those in the live stream yesterday. So if you're looking to stack one of these Napoleon Commander coins, I've heard that the launch has gone pretty well. Last time they did one of these, they sold out in 24 hours. So don't expect these to be around too long. But a very cool series. being put together by SD Bullion and the Scottsdale Mint. You can check it out at sdbullion.com/commander. Okay, now I mentioned that not everybody was looking to avoid an escalation in this conflict with Iran, notably. And we see that with Lindsey Graham. Now, there have been quite a few very hawkish individuals talking about escalating this conflict to Iran, getting the U.S. involved here. Of course, we're deploying an aircraft carrier to the Eastern Mediterranean, along with all of its escorts and all that. So a very big U.S. military presence about to head to the Middle East. And you've got, Lindsey Graham is a war pig, Joe Potter says. Yeah, I'd say he's probably a military-industrial complex shill, no doubt about that. But I want to read some of these things he says here. So he says, if Hezbollah attacks Israel, this is yesterday on X, formerly known as Twitter, I would make Iran pay a heavy price. Okay, and we're going to get an idea in these tweets as we go through of what that might look like. And this will have a very big impact on our daily lives if it occurs. So let's read a few of his tweets here. He says, it is long past time for the Iranian terrorist state to pay a price for all the upheaval and destruction being sown throughout the region and the world. An attack by Hezbollah and other Iranian proxies would be devastating to Israeli defense systems. If such an attack occurs, Israel and the United States should go after the Iranian oil refineries and oil infrastructure, which is the lifeblood of the Iranian economy. That should give you pause. That statement right there. That's going to be a big problem. One of the things I did this morning was I filled up my gas tanks, and you might want to make a practice of keeping your tanks topped off at like 3/4 or above for the immediate future moving forward until this gets resolved. Because if there's an attack on Iran, all bets are off. The oil price is going to soar through the roof. There's no doubt about that. Look at this article. This is from Bloomberg. We'll get back to Lindsey Graham here in just a moment. But this is from Bloomberg, August 21st, 2023. Iran's booming oil flows surge above 2 million barrels a day. Some a chart here showing how much oil they were producing. You can see it's moving up and up and up. So, they're exporting about 2 million barrels of oil. A lot of this is illicit. It violates sanctions. They're sending it to China for a discount. But you got to keep in mind that this is still contributing to global supply in a big way. 2 million barrels of oil a day. That's a lot. This is something that the U.S. was probably allowing to slide because we've got OPEC plus, Russia and Saudi Arabia specifically having these voluntary production cuts, which has been driving the price of oil through the roof lately. The administration, again, I mentioned they're concerned about the price of oil and the inflation that high oil prices will bring, the price inflation for consumers as we head into this 2024 election. So they were happy to have these exports going out and helping to put a cap on the price of crude oil and kind of buffer those production cuts from from Saudi Arabia and Russia. And so, if we knock out their oil producing facilities, well, that buffer will be gone, and you're going to see the price of oil on the global markets soar. It's supply and demand. 2 million barrels a day. If we lose that, that'll have a huge impact on the economy. I think it'll have a huge impact on the price of gold and silver too. I mean, if commodities begin to soar, as we see inflation unleashed, as we see more and more borrowing, more and more money printing likely from the Fed. I mean, if we go to war, that's a pretty good context for the Fed to begin easing a little bit, if you ask me, to help enable the spending. War is one of these occasions that the powers that be can use to justify just about anything. So it's also one of the most inflationary events a country can go through. Hyperinflations typically follow wars. That's a very common trend we witnessed in the 20th century, and it's likely to be one that plays out in the 20th century or 21st century as well. All right, so back to this guy, Lindsey Graham. Everyone is right to suggest that Hamas's barbaric attack against Israel was aided by Iran. Everybody is right when they say Iran is the chief supporter of Hezbollah, a Shiite terrorist organization with tens of thousands of rockets pointed at Israel from Lebanon. Yeah, so again, if Hezbollah gets involved, which we're going to get into here in just a moment, there's quite a bit of rhetoric here from Lindsey Graham and also from other hawkish folks here in the U.S. who are looking to target Iran. And I'm telling you, if you like having gasoline for your car, that's probably not a good move. Thank you, Constitutional Stacker. And I do want to take a moment just to say a big thank you to everybody who watches the live streams, who tunes in, who does the super chats. And look, if you want to support the channel, best thing right now, I'm just asking you, please like the video. Just smash that thumbs up button. Takes 2 seconds. It's easy to do. Just click the like. That helps get this information out into the algorithm, and I appreciate that so much. Thank you, Liquid Electrum. Wow. Thank you all so much for the support. Really appreciate all that. All right. Now, here's a story from Al Jazeera. Palestinians in Lebanon ready to fight Israel if Hezbollah helps them. So there are Palestinian factions to the north in Lebanon. They're looking for Hezbollah's support. So Hezbollah is going to have plenty of manpower for any incursion they make on Israel here. Here's another one from Reuters. And again, this is, updated 12 minutes ago. This is what I'm saying. It's hard to get on top of this stuff to, report on it, because it's like there's just constantly stuff happening. Things are moving quick now. And, anyway, dropping a silver quarter for Smart Silver Stacker. Thanks, dropping to Mike. Appreciate everybody out there. Appreciate the support, folks. Please do smash that like button. All right, so here's one from Reuters. Hezbollah member killed in Israel shelling in Lebanon as conflict expands. So this could potentially open another front on Israel. As we've seen, Israel a little vulnerable here. These attacks took them by surprise. I know everybody out there is going to have a lot of theories on that. One idea is it was a failure by their intelligence service, this brilliant stroke by Hamas. I'm sure other folks are out there thinking there perhaps are other reasons that this attack was able to go off without the, IDF responding rapidly. This is something that we see in warfare all the time. In 9/11, for example, there were intelligence reports that the Saudis and others might try something with hijackers. And, in hindsight, we look at that and we see, oh, why didn't you spot that? But you have to remember that, these intelligence agencies, they're getting tons of reports all the time. So in hindsight, you can look back and say, oh, yeah, this, was obvious. Why didn't you spot this? But in real time, it's a little more difficult than that. And the reason I'm mentioning this is I don't actually have it pulled up, but there was a Egyptian intelligence report that went out to the Israelis ahead of this, allegedly. So what the Egyptians are saying, that they warned the Israelis something big was coming. Was it a Pearl Harbor type thing? A lot of people think that Pearl Harbor, FDR, kind of allowed the U.S. fleet at Pearl Harbor to be attacked by the Japanese to create a casus belli, if you will, a reason to go to war with Japan. So did Israel drop their guard to allow an event to occur, to allow them to then strike Iran? I don't know. Anything's possible, folks. It's all speculation. Again, we have to be very circumspect about everything that we see. But, again, it could just be that these intelligence reports, there's a flood of them and they don't phone in on the right one. Maybe they think the threat is something else. I read that a number of Israeli forces were deployed to the West Bank when this occurred because there were attacks there. Was that coordinated? Was that, was that put together by Hamas and the Hezbollah and Palestinians? Who knows? One thing is clear here, that this attack did have a lot of coordination. The individuals involved were very well armed, and it does seem possible to me that Iran would have a hand in planning this. That is what Hezbollah and Hamas, according to the Wall Street Journal, are saying. Can you trust what the Wall Street Journal says in a time of war? Well, take it with a grain of salt, folks. Again, fifth generational warfare. This is more a battle of wills and information than anything else. So that's something we have to keep in mind here. All right, so Hezbollah member killed in Israeli shelling. Yeah, this is bad because if that second front opens up, we could rapidly see this escalate to involve Iran. Again, we can read a little bit about this. I haven't even read all these stories yet. I haven't read ahead because, again, this is updated 12 minutes ago after I started the live stream. So you're reading this with me in real time. A member of Lebanon's Hezbollah was killed in Israeli bombardment in southern Lebanon on Monday, the group said in a statement, as the conflict between Israel and Palestinian militias expand to the Israeli-Lebanese border. And again, that would be another front, so that would put a lot of pressure on Israel. Maybe they'll need support from a U.S. aircraft carrier. That's what we're going to hear anyway. All right, here's one from Haaretz. So this is an Israeli newspaper. This is just a headline. I don't actually see the story about this underneath, but it says, Israelis wounded near Lebanon border as death toll reaches 700. EU freezes aid to Gaza. Yeah, and Gaza is under siege right now. The Israelis have cut off power, food, and water. They ostensibly may be planning a hostage rescue attempt. There are all these hostages, folks who were abducted, being held in Gaza. That's what we're hearing. And the IDF may stage a ground operation there. You know, if they do that, that may be taken as a major escalation by Hezbollah and Iran. So, you know, we may see responses from them in regards to this. And again, Iran gets involved. Well, listen, go fill up your car now. Fill up your gas tanks. If you have any plans to set aside fuel, that would probably be a good time to do it. All right, we get the story here. As the war with Hamas enters the third day, the Israeli military said it managed to gain full control over Israeli towns infiltrated by terrorists, but warned that some might still be in the country. Yeah, nothing about the Lebanon border here, just this headline, though. Here's one from Newsweek. Israeli soldiers attacked on Lebanon border as Hezbollah fears grow. Fears were growing on Monday that the war between Israel and Palestinian group Hamas could be set to spiral amid reports that other Islamist groups may be planning to join the fighting. On Monday, Daniel Hagari, spokesperson for the IDF, appeared to suggest that another militant group was becoming involved. In translated comments on social media site X, formerly known as Twitter, Hagari said a report was received about the infiltration of several suspects into Israeli territory from Lebanese territory. IDF forces are deployed in the area. Yeah, so you get the idea here, folks. This thing is escalating rapidly. We've got Alvidus. Okay, I'm not going to try and pronounce your name, sir, but so now gold price will boom. Well, yeah, very, very possibly. We are seeing both crude oil and gold and silver all catching a bid on this escalation. Now, is there still the possibility for a major pan sell-off event? Yeah, I think that that is still possibly in the cards. I think that it's probably a bigger possibility now. It may be averted for a period of time here. If the flight to safety means folks go into the bond market, that means we could see yields drop. That means that other assets like gold and equities could benefit. But I do believe that, I mean, just given the volume of debt that is currently being generated, the deficit spending, I think it's highly likely that we may see bond yields continue to spike up here in relatively short order. So, you know, a breather and then a resumption of that sell-off, especially if we get some very bad news, especially if we see the conflict escalate. Now, in that pan sell-off event, previously I had been under the impression that the price of oil would probably sell off alongside everything else. But now, I mean, there's the possibility that it could very well be a massively spiking price of crude oil that could be the event that makes markets tank. So, you know, will gold and silver sell off in that event? It's probably going to involve a conflict with Iran. So, I mean, I think there will be more flight to safety there. And one thing I do think that we're going to witness here in the relatively near future, folks, is that there's going to be a flight to safety at some point, but investors are going to stop viewing U.S. debt instruments as a safe haven. I mean, I don't view them as safe at all. You've got billionaires like Ray Dalio recently warning that he wants to get out of U.S. debt. I think it's only a matter of time before investors realize that the U.S. Treasury market isn't the safe haven that it has been cracked up to be. And if that's the case, then what do you look to for safe havens? Well, I mean, I think gold and silver are the obvious choice. So I do think that there's a day coming when we see the safe haven bids go into the metals. And also, I want to point out that if we do get some kind of a pan sell-off event, some kind of a market crash, I'm fairly confident that the price of physical metals, of like physical gold and silver bullion that you can hold in your hand, won't drop nearly as much, if at all, as the paper equivalents, whether that be an SLV or GLD ETF or a futures contract. So that's how I see this playing out. Look, you gotta read between the lines with all of the news that is coming out. You've got to get prepared for what is likely right around the corner. I mean, we could be right around the corner from full-blown World War III. The battle lines have been delineated. We've got NATO and Israel, and then you've got the global south and BRICS, Iran, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, all the new BRICS Plus members. Those likely are on the other team, and that's my analysis of it. You know, who am I? I'm just some guy on YouTube who likes stacking silver, so take everything I say with a grain of salt too. Obviously, I think that goes without saying. I mean, what do I know? I'm just trying to stay on top of this and stay as prepared as possible. The window to prepare, you know, in terms of food and energy and self-sufficiency and making yourself independent of systems of support, it's still open, but it may be closing soon. So do what you can, you know, focus on your physical fitness, get that squared away, get your water and food and basics squared away here, folks. If you've got a bunch of cash sitting around, look, I don't give financial advice, but I like to have cash too, in case everything drops, in case you get some spike down, because, you know, that'll be followed by money printing like you have never seen before, and it'll go back up, but it might be a good opportunity to buy some stuff. But I wouldn't want to be in all paper. You know, diversification is the name of the game to make yourself anti-fragile and resilient to what is coming. And so, you know, have some metals, have some cash, have some food, have some security devices. That's what I don't give financial advice, but, you know, get prepared. That is advice. And I think the window is going to be closing soon. So we just got to do what we can. But stay tuned to this channel. I will do what I can to keep you abreast of what's going on and give you my take on things. I do just want to say a huge thank you to everybody who liked the video, who tuned in. Thank you for the super chats, Constitutional Stacker, Liquid Electrum. Really appreciate the support, everybody. And I will catch all of you next time. Stay safe and happy stacking. Smart Silver Stacker, out.